Hey guys, tonight we are sailing into the fascinating story of the HMHS Britannic, the giant sister ship of the Titanic that was meant to be the safest ship ever built. If you enjoy relaxing history stories like this and want to help the channel grow, please subscribe and join us for more journeys into the past. Now settle in and let the story begin. After the tragic sinking of the Titanic in 1912, the world was shocked. Shipbuilders, engineers, and governments all wanted answers. How could the most famous ship in the world disappear beneath the cold waters of the North Atlantic on its very first voyage? While investigations continued, another enormous ship was quietly taking shape in the shipyards of Belfast. Her name was Britannic. She belonged to the same family as the Titanic and the Olympic. The three vessels were designed to be the pride of British passenger travel. Yet Britannic would live a very different life. When construction began, engineers carefully studied every mistake connected to the Titanic disaster. The new ship received stronger safety features. Her watertight compartments were improved. Her hull was reinforced. More lifeboats were added. Many people believed she would become one of the safest ships ever built. By the time Britannic was launched in 1914, she was even larger than Titanic. Workers and visitors admired her immense size. Standing beside the vessel was like standing next to a floating city. Her elegant design promised comfort, luxury, and speed. Wealthy passengers imagined crossing the ocean in style, while families dreamed of starting new lives in distant lands. But fate had other plans. Before Britannic could begin her career as a passenger liner, Europe was thrown into chaos. The First World War erupted, and countries across the continent mobilized for battle. Suddenly, luxury travel seemed unimportant. Governments needed ships for military purposes, and Britannic was called into service before she could carry a single paying passenger across the Atlantic. The giant vessel was transformed into a hospital ship. Her grand dining rooms and luxurious cabins were converted into medical wards. White paint covered much of her exterior, and large red crosses appeared along her sides. Instead of wealthy travelers, the ship now carried wounded soldiers. Doctors, nurses, and medical staff moved through corridors that had originally been designed for first-class guests. During the war, Britannic traveled across dangerous waters of the Mediterranean Sea. Each voyage carried hundreds of injured men away from battlefields. Despite the risks, many crew members felt relatively safe aboard the ship. After all, Britannic had been built with the lessons of Titanic in mind. She was stronger, larger, and supposedly prepared for almost any emergency. Few people imagined that disaster was already waiting ahead. As the months passed, Britannic completed several successful missions. Wounded soldiers arrived exhausted from combat, and many left the ship alive because of the care they received on board. Nurses worked long hours, while doctors performed operations in rooms that had once been intended for luxury passengers. Despite the horrors of war, the ship became known as a place of hope. For many injured men, seeing Britannic appear on the horizon meant survival. On the morning of November 21st, 1916, the ship was sailing through the waters near the Greek island of Kea. The sea was calm and the weather was pleasant. Breakfast was being prepared. Crew members moved through their daily routines, and many passengers were still resting. Nothing seemed unusual. Then, at approximately 8 o'clock, a powerful explosion shook the vessel. The force was so sudden that many people were thrown off balance. Dishes crashed to the floor, and frightened voices echoed through the corridors. At first, few understood what had happened. Some feared a torpedo attack from a German submarine. Others thought a mechanical failure had occurred deep within the ship. In reality, Britannic had likely struck a naval mine hidden beneath the water. The explosion tore a large hole in the ship's side, and seawater immediately rushed inside. Although Britannic had been designed with improved watertight compartments, the damage was severe. Crew members quickly assessed the situation. Reports reached the bridge that several compartments were flooding faster than expected. Captain Charles Bartlett understood the danger. Unlike the Titanic years, earlier this disaster was unfolding in daylight and relatively close to land. He hoped to steer the ship toward shallow water and beach her before she could sink. Orders were given throughout the vessel. Nurses helped patients prepare for evacuation. Sailors uncovered lifeboats. Medical staff attempted to keep everyone calm. Despite the emergency, many people believed the ship would survive. After all, Britannic was supposed to be nearly unsinkable. However, new problems soon appeared. Some portholes on the lower decks had been left open to provide fresh air for patients. As the ship listed to one side, seawater began pouring through those openings. Compartments that should have remained dry started flooding. Every minute, the situation became more dangerous. Meanwhile, a few lifeboats were launched without waiting for official instructions. Panic and confusion caused some crew members to act too quickly. These boats entered the water while the ship's massive propellers were still turning. It was a tragic mistake that would lead to one of the most horrifying moments of the entire disaster. The enormous propellers at the stern were still spinning as Captain Bartlett attempted to drive the ship toward shore. The sea around them churned violently. People in nearby lifeboats suddenly realized the danger. Crew members shouted warnings and desperately tried to row away. Some boats managed to escape, but others were pulled toward the giant blades. Survivors later described scenes of terror as lifeboats were dragged into the rotating propellers and destroyed. It was one of the deadliest moments of the sinking. Those watching from the deck could hardly believe what they were seeing. Captain Bartlett immediately ordered the engines stopped, but for some it was already too late. Despite this tragedy, the evacuation continued. Unlike the Titanic, Britannic had enough lifeboats for everyone on board. The challenge was not the number of boats, but the speed at which the ship was sinking. Water continued to spread through the damaged compartments. The vessel slowly leaned farther to starboard, and the deck became increasingly difficult to walk across. Nurses guided wounded soldiers toward safety. Doctors assisted patients who could barely stand. Crew members worked tirelessly to lower lifeboats and maintain order. Many survivors later praised the courage of the medical staff, especially the nurses who remained calm even as the ship tilted beneath them. Among those on board was a young nurse named Violet Jessup. She had already survived the sinking of the Titanic several years earlier. Now, she found herself facing another maritime disaster. When she entered the water during the evacuation, she was pulled beneath the surface by the ship's movement and struck her head. Remarkably, she survived and would later become famous as one of the few people who experienced both tragedies firsthand. As Britannic continued to sink, it became clear that nothing could save her. The bow dropped deeper into the sea, while the stern gradually rose higher. Furniture slid across rooms. Equipment broke loose. Water rushed through hallways that had once been carefully designed for luxury travelers. Then, less than 1 hour after the explosion, the giant ship reached her final moments at approximately 9:07 in the morning. Britannic disappeared beneath the waters of the Aegean Sea. The vessel that had been built to correct the mistakes of Titanic was gone. Yet the outcome was very different from the disaster that had shocked the world 4 years earlier. Of the more than 1,000 people on board, the vast majority survived. The combination of daylight, warmer weather, and a faster evacuation saved hundreds of lives. Still, the loss of such a massive ship left many unanswered questions and mysteries that historians would continue investigating for decades. In the days that followed, newspapers around the world reported the loss of Britannic. Many readers were astonished. How could another giant ship from the same family as Titanic end up at the bottom of the sea? Investigators immediately began searching for answers. Witnesses described the explosion, the flooding, and the desperate evacuation. Naval authorities studied charts of the region and examined reports from ships operating nearby. While some people believed a submarine had attacked the vessel, evidence gradually pointed toward a sea mine that had been laid earlier in the war. Yet questions remained. Many experts wondered whether Britannic would have survived if all of her portholes had been closed. Others debated whether the captain's attempt to reach shallow water helped or worsened the situation. These discussions continued for years. Despite the tragedy, many historians consider Britannic a remarkable example of how lessons can save lives. The sinking of Titanic had revealed weaknesses in ship design and emergency procedures. Because of those lessons, Britannic carried more lifeboats and better safety equipment. Crew members were also better prepared for evacuation. While the ship itself was lost, hundreds of people survived who might otherwise have perished. As time passed, the wreck slowly disappeared from public attention. The First World War continued to dominate headlines, and millions of people focused on the larger conflict spreading across Europe. Beneath the waters of the Aegean Sea, Britannic rested quietly on the seabed. Unlike Titanic, which lies in the freezing depths of the North Atlantic, Britannic settled in much shallower and clearer waters. For decades, divers dreamed of finding and exploring the wreck. Eventually, those dreams became reality. Explorers descending into the blue depths discovered that much of the ship remained surprisingly well preserved. Giant corridors, stairways, and sections of the hull could still be recognized. Sunlight penetrated the water above, creating an eerie contrast to the darkness surrounding Titanic's wreck. Photographs revealed a silent giant frozen in time. Divers carefully documented the vessel and searched for clues about her final moments. Each expedition added new pieces to the story. Some findings supported earlier theories, while others raised entirely new questions. Even today, researchers continue studying the wreck. Modern technology allows experts to examine details that previous generations could only imagine. Every visit helps historians better understand what happened on that November morning in 1916. The story of Britannic is not simply about a shipwreck. It is a story of ambition, engineering, war, and survival. Built to become one of the world's greatest passenger liners, she instead spent her short life helping wounded soldiers during one of history's deadliest conflicts. Though her career lasted only a brief time, the ship left behind a legacy that continues to fascinate historians, divers, and maritime enthusiasts around the world. One of the reasons Britannic continues to fascinate people is the striking contrast between what she was supposed to become and what she actually became. When designers first imagined the ship, they pictured elegant passengers walking through luxurious halls, musicians performing in grand lounges, and families gazing across the Atlantic Ocean from spacious decks. Brochures promised comfort and prestige. Wealthy travelers were expected to compete for the finest cabins, while immigrants dreamed of reaching new opportunities overseas. None of those dreams would ever fully come true. Britannic never completed a single commercial passenger voyage. Instead, her short existence became tied to the hardships of war. Many of the people who stepped aboard did so while carrying physical wounds or emotional scars from the battlefields of Europe. Rather than serving luxury meals to tourists, the ship's staff focused on treating injuries and transporting patients to safety. This unexpected transformation gives Britannic a unique place in maritime history. She was both a symbol of luxury and a tool of humanitarian service. Historians often compare the three sister ships. Olympic enjoyed a long and successful career, carrying passengers for decades before retirement. Titanic became famous because of her catastrophic maiden voyage. Britannic occupied a different role. She neither enjoyed Olympic's long success nor Titanic's worldwide fame during her lifetime. Yet her story contains elements of both. She inherited the ambition of her builders and the tragedy that seemed to follow the family of ships. Many survivors never forgot their experiences aboard Britannic. Years later, they described the sounds of the explosion, the sight of water entering the ship, and the determination shown by doctors, nurses, and sailors during the evacuation. Their memories help modern historians reconstruct the final hour in remarkable detail. Without those first-hand accounts, much of the disaster would remain unknown. The ship herself now rests quietly beneath layers of marine life. Fish swim through spaces once filled with passengers and crew. Metal surfaces are slowly changed by time and seawater. Yet even after more than a century, the outline of the great vessel remains visible for divers approaching the wreck. The experience is often described as unforgettable. The enormous size of the ship still inspires awe. It serves as a reminder of both human achievement and human vulnerability. No matter how advanced technology becomes, nature can still challenge even the most impressive creations. Perhaps that is why the story of Britannic continues to endure. It is not merely the tale of a ship that sank. It is a reminder that history is often shaped by unexpected turns of fate. A vessel built to demonstrate safety and progress ultimately found itself caught in a global war, and its destiny changed forever. Yet, through courage, preparation, and sacrifice, many lives were saved, ensuring that the legacy of Britannic would be remembered long after the waves closed above her. Today, the name Britannic is often overshadowed by the fame of Titanic. Yet, many maritime historians argue that her story is equally compelling. While Titanic demonstrated the devastating consequences of insufficient safety measures, Britannic showed how improvements and preparation could dramatically reduce the loss of life. In many ways, the two ships together changed the future of sea travel. Regulations concerning lifeboats, emergency drills, and ship construction became far stricter during the years that followed. Countless passengers on later ships benefited from lessons learned through these tragedies. When people imagine great shipwrecks, they often focus on the final moments. But Britannic's story is also about the thousands of individuals whose lives briefly intersected with the vessel. Shipbuilders spent years constructing her enormous frame. Engineers carefully designed systems intended to improve safety. Nurses crossed her decks while caring for wounded soldiers. Sailors worked long hours to keep the ship operating during wartime. Patients looked upon her as a floating refuge that could carry them away from danger. Each person experienced a different version of the Britannic story. Some remembered hope, others remembered fear, and many remembered both. Another reason the wreck attracts attention is its remarkable condition, compared with many other famous shipwrecks, because it lies in relatively clear water. Researchers have been able to explore it in far greater detail than many vessels resting at extreme depths. Advanced cameras and robotic equipment have produced extraordinary images of corridors, machinery, and structural features. These discoveries allow historians to compare written accounts with physical evidence resting on the seabed. Every expedition contributes another piece to the puzzle. Some mysteries have been solved, while others continue to inspire debate among experts. Even small details can lead to new theories about the sinking and the actions taken during the evacuation. Beyond the historical facts, there is something deeply human about Britannic's story. It reminds us how quickly plans can change. A ship designed for luxury became a hospital ship. A vessel expected to enjoy decades of service survived only a short time. People who boarded expecting an ordinary voyage suddenly found themselves facing a life-threatening emergency. Yet, within that crisis, many displayed extraordinary courage. Nurses remained at their posts. Crew members assisted strangers, and countless individuals helped one another reach safety. These acts of bravery are an important part of Britannic's legacy. While the ship itself was lost, the stories of those who served aboard her continue to endure. More than a century later, the giant vessel still rests beneath the waters of the Aegean Sea, silent but not forgotten, preserving within her wreck one of the most remarkable chapters in maritime history. Perhaps one of the most fascinating questions is what Britannic's future might have looked like if she had never encountered that mine. Many historians believe she would have become one of the most successful passenger liners of her era. With her improved safety features and luxurious accommodations, she could have carried thousands of travelers across the Atlantic for decades. Her name might have become associated with elegance and comfort rather than disaster. Yet history often follows paths no one expects. The outbreak of war changed everything long before Britannic had the chance to fulfill her original purpose. Because of that twist of fate, the ship became part of a much larger story involving nations, armies, and millions of people affected by the conflict. The wreck itself has become something of a time capsule. Unlike museums where objects are carefully preserved and displayed, Britannic remains in the environment where her story ended. Every corridor, room, and piece of machinery provides clues about life aboard the ship. Divers who explore the wreck frequently describe a strange feeling of stepping into the past. Even though the sea has claimed the vessel, traces of human activity can still be seen throughout the wreck. These discoveries help transform historical records into something more tangible and real. They allow modern generations to connect with people who lived more than a century ago. The continued interest in Britannic also reflects humanity's enduring fascination with great voyages and great disasters. Ships have always represented adventure, opportunity, and progress. When one is lost, especially a vessel as impressive as Britannic, the story captures the imagination for generations. Yet, Britannic's legacy is not defined solely by tragedy. It is also a story of resilience. Hundreds of people survived because lessons had been learned from previous mistakes. Procedures were improved. Safety measures were strengthened. Decisions made after earlier disasters helped save lives on that November morning. In that sense, Britannic represents both loss and progress at the same time. Her story reminds us that even painful events can lead to changes that protect future generations. More than 100 years after her sinking, Britannic remains one of the most intriguing ships ever built. Resting quietly beneath the sea, she continues to inspire research, exploration, and storytelling, ensuring that her remarkable journey will not be forgotten. For many years after the sinking, survivors carried their memories quietly. Some rarely spoke about the event, while others shared their experiences with family. Historians and journalists, their testimonies revealed details that official reports could never fully capture. They described the atmosphere aboard the ship before the explosion, the confusion that followed, and the relief of reaching safety. Through these accounts, later generations gained a clearer understanding of what happened during Britannic's final voyage. Personal stories often preserve emotions that facts and statistics cannot. They remind us that behind every historical event are real people with hopes, fears, and dreams. Many of those aboard Britannic were young men recovering from injuries sustained in war. Others were medical workers dedicated to helping them heal. The sinking interrupted countless personal journeys. Yet it also created stories of courage and compassion that would be remembered for decades. As technology advanced during the 20th and 21st centuries, interest in Britannic continued to grow. New equipment allowed researchers to map the wreck in extraordinary detail. High-resolution images revealed features that earlier explorers could only imagine. These discoveries helped answer long-standing questions while also generating new ones. History is rarely a completed story. Each generation examines evidence from a different perspective, finding new insights within familiar events. Britannic remains a perfect example of this process. More than a century after she disappeared beneath the waves, scholars and explorers are still learning from her. The ship's story also serves as a reminder of the enormous scale of the First World War. While the sinking of Britannic was significant, it occurred within a conflict that affected millions of lives. Her transformation from luxury liner to hospital ship reflects how war reshaped entire societies. Everything from industry and transportation to daily life was influenced by the demands of the conflict. Britannic became part of that larger historical transformation. Today, when people hear her name, they often think of a magnificent vessel resting silently beneath clear Mediterranean waters. Yet her true legacy reaches far beyond the wreck itself. It lives in the lessons learned, the lives saved, and the stories passed from one generation to the next. Through those memories, Britannic continues her journey across history, long after her final voyage came to an end. Another remarkable aspect of Britannic's story is how differently history remembers success and failure. Olympic, the oldest sister ship, enjoyed a long career and safely transported passengers for many years. Yet outside maritime circles, far fewer people recognize her name. Titanic, which sank on her first voyage, became one of the most famous ships in history. Britannic occupies a unique place between the two. She was neither a long-term commercial success nor a disaster with the same scale of loss as Titanic. Instead, she became a symbol of lessons learned and lives saved. Her story demonstrates that history is not always measured by fame alone. Sometimes the most meaningful legacies are found in the improvements that follow tragedy. Because of changes made after Titanic, Britannic's passengers and crew had a far greater chance of survival. That difference transformed the outcome of the disaster. Looking back today, it is easy to focus on the sinking itself, but the ship's existence represented years of effort by thousands of workers. Engineers, designers, shipbuilders, and craftsmen all contributed to creating one of the largest vessels of her time. Their work reflected the confidence and ambition of an era when technology seemed capable of overcoming any obstacle. Britannic embodied those hopes. Even though her life was short, she remains an impressive example of human ingenuity and determination. Visitors to maritime museums often find themselves drawn to photographs and models of the ship. The elegant design, enormous scale, and dramatic history continue to capture the imagination. Meanwhile, researchers keep uncovering new details that enrich our understanding of her final voyage. Every artifact, document, and survivor account adds another layer to the story. This ongoing process ensures that Britannic remains more than a forgotten wreck on the seabed. She continues to teach us about engineering, history, war, and human resilience. Perhaps that is the reason her story endures after so many years. It combines tragedy with hope, loss with survival, and mystery with discovery. Few historical events contain all of these elements in such a powerful way. As long as people remain curious about the past, the story of Britannic will continue to be told, preserving the memory of a ship whose journey ended far too soon, but whose legacy continues to sail through history. Although more than a century has passed since Britannic sank, the ship still inspires a sense of wonder. Few vessels have experienced such a dramatic transformation in such a short period of time. Built as a luxurious ocean liner, converted into a hospital ship, and lost during wartime, Britannic lived several different lives within only a few years. Each phase of her existence tells a different story. One is a story of ambition and engineering. Another is a story of war and sacrifice. The final chapter is a story of survival and remembrance. Together, they create a narrative far richer than a simple account of a shipwreck. Modern historians often emphasize that Britannic should not be viewed only through the shadow of Titanic. While the two ships shared similar origins, their histories ultimately followed different paths. Titanic became famous because so many lives were lost. Britannic became important because so many lives were saved. The contrast between these outcomes highlights the value of learning from past mistakes. It demonstrates that improvements in safety and preparation can make an enormous difference when disaster strikes. This lesson remains relevant today in fields far beyond maritime travel. Engineers, scientists, and planners continue to study past failures in order to prevent future ones. In that sense, Britannic's legacy extends well beyond the sea. The ship also occupies a special place in the imagination of explorers. Unlike many famous wrecks that lie in extreme darkness, Britannic rests where divers can actually visit and document her condition. Every descent offers a rare opportunity to encounter a genuine piece of history. The sight of the massive hull emerging from the blue water is often described as unforgettable. For many divers, it feels less like visiting a wreck and more like meeting a silent witness from another era. The ship remains there exactly where history left her, preserving traces of the world in which she sailed. As years become decades and decades become centuries, physical connections to the past grow increasingly valuable. Britannic provides one of those connections. She reminds us that history is not merely a collection of dates and facts. It is the story of real people facing unexpected challenges and making difficult decisions. The nurses who cared for patients, the sailors who launched lifeboats, and the captain who struggled to save his ship all played roles in a drama that unfolded on a single morning in 1916. Their actions continue to be remembered because they reveal something timeless about courage, responsibility, and human endurance. And so, Britannic remains more than a lost ship. She stands as a lasting reminder that even in moments of disaster, determination and compassion can leave a legacy that survives long after the waves have settled. There is also a quieter side to the Britannic story that is often overlooked. Beyond the headlines, investigations, and famous photographs lies the simple reality of everyday life aboard the ship. Before the explosion, crew members were performing ordinary tasks. Meals were being prepared in the kitchens. Nurses were checking on patients. Sailors were carrying out routine duties on deck. Conversations took place in corridors and cabins. People were thinking about their next destination, their families, and their future plans. None of them knew that within minutes their lives would change forever. History often focuses on major events, yet those events are experienced by individuals living ordinary moments. Britannic reminds us how quickly normal life can be interrupted by unexpected circumstances. It is this human element that makes the story so compelling, even today. Many survivors later recalled not only the fear of the sinking, but also the kindness they witnessed during the evacuation. Strangers helped one another. Medical staff remained dedicated to their patients. Crew members continued working despite the danger around them. These actions may not attract as much attention as the disaster itself, but they reveal the character of the people involved. In many ways, such moments are the true heart of the story. They show how individuals respond when faced with uncertainty and crisis. Over time, Britannic has become more than a historical subject. She has become a symbol. For some, she represents the risks that accompany technological progress. For others, she symbolizes the importance of preparation and adaptation. Still others see her as a reminder of the countless civilian and medical workers who served during wartime. A single ship can carry many meanings, and Britannic has acquired all of them through the years. Her story continues to appear in books, documentaries, and research projects because each generation finds something different within it. Some are fascinated by the engineering. Others are drawn to the mystery of the wreck. Many simply appreciate the human stories connected to the vessel. That wide appeal helps explain why interest in Britannic has never completely faded. Even now, more than 100 years later, people continue asking questions about the ship and searching for new details about her final voyage. The answers may never be complete, but perhaps that is part of the fascination. Certain stories remain alive because there is always more to discover. Britannic is one of those stories, a remarkable chapter of history that continues to inspire curiosity, reflection, and respect long after the ship herself disappeared beneath the sea. As historians continue studying Britannic, they often return to a simple question: what can this story teach us today? The answer goes far beyond ships and oceans. Britannic demonstrates the importance of learning from experience. The tragedy of Titanic led to changes that saved lives aboard Britannic. Those improvements did not prevent the sinking, but they dramatically changed the outcome for the people on board. This pattern appears throughout history. Mistakes, failures, and disasters often become the foundation for future progress. The lessons learned can protect generations that follow. Britannic stands as a powerful example of that principle in action. Her story also highlights the unpredictable nature of history itself. The ship was designed for one purpose, yet spent most of her short career serving another. Events far beyond the control of her builders altered her destiny completely. Such unexpected turns are common throughout the past. Plans are made, expectations are formed, and then circumstances change. The ability to adapt becomes just as important as the original plan. Britannic adapted from luxury liner to hospital ship, and in doing so, she provided valuable service during a difficult period of world history. This transformation remains one of the most remarkable aspects of her legacy. Another reason the story endures is because it connects several different worlds. It links the age of grand ocean liners with the realities of global war. It connects engineering achievements with human courage. It brings together explorers, historians, divers, and ordinary people who simply enjoy learning about the past. Few historical subjects bridge so many interests at once. Whether someone is fascinated by maritime history, military history, or stories of survival, Britannic offers something meaningful to explore. Even the wreck itself continues to contribute to our understanding. Every survey, photograph, and expedition helps preserve information that might otherwise be lost with time. In this way, the ship still serves a purpose long after her sinking. She continues to educate and inspire. Perhaps that is the most remarkable part of the entire story. A vessel that disappeared beneath the sea more than a century ago still influences how people think about history, safety, and human resilience. The waves may have claimed the ship, but they did not erase her legacy. Instead, Britannic remains a lasting reminder that history is not only about what was lost, it is also about what was learned, what was preserved, and what continues to be remembered by those who choose to look back and listen to the stories of the past. If we could travel back to the shipyards of Belfast and watch Britannic being built, it would be difficult to imagine the path that lay ahead. Thousands of workers moved across the massive steel structure each day. Riveters hammered plates into place. Engineers checked measurements and designs. Cranes lifted enormous sections of the ship high above the ground. To those involved, Britannic represented the future. She was expected to carry passengers across oceans and demonstrate the latest advances in shipbuilding. Few could have predicted that within only a few years, she would be serving as a hospital ship during one of the largest wars in human history. Fewer still could have imagined that her name would eventually be associated with one of the most famous maritime disasters ever recorded. Yet history is filled with such unexpected twists. The gap between expectation and reality often creates the stories that endure the longest. Britannic is one of those stories. Her builders dreamed of luxury voyages. Instead, the ship became part of a global conflict. They hoped she would enjoy a long career. Instead, her service lasted only a brief period. Despite this, the vessel accomplished something important. She carried wounded men away from danger and provided medical support during a time when such help was desperately needed. That contribution is sometimes overshadowed by the sinking itself, but it deserves to be remembered. The ship's service as a hospital vessel affected countless lives, many of whom survived because care was available when they needed it most. In that sense, Britannic's legacy includes not only tragedy, but also compassion. Historians often point out that a ship's importance cannot be measured solely by how long it sailed. Some vessels spend decades at sea and leave little lasting impression. Others operate for only a short time, yet become deeply woven into history. Britannic belongs to the second group. Her brief existence generated stories that continue to be studied more than a century later. Every new generation approaches those stories with fresh questions and perspectives. That ongoing interest ensures that the ship remains part of our collective memory long after the final survivor accounts have faded, and long after the wreck has changed beneath the sea. The lessons and stories connected to Britannic will likely continue to be shared. They remind us of ambition, adaptation, courage, and the enduring human desire to understand the past. Few ships have left behind such a complex and fascinating legacy, which is why Britannic remains one of the most compelling maritime stories ever told. For many people, the appeal of Britannic lies in the fact that her story feels unfinished. Even though historians know far more about the ship today than they did decades ago, there are still details that invite discussion and debate. Researchers continue examining records, photographs, and physical evidence from the wreck. Each discovery helps clarify certain aspects of the disaster, while raising new questions about others. This ongoing search for knowledge keeps the story alive. History is rarely a fixed collection of facts. Instead, it is a conversation between the past and the present. Britannic remains part of that conversation because there is always something more to learn. The ship encourages curiosity in a way few historical subjects can. At the same time, her story offers a broader perspective on human achievement. The early 20th century was an age of enormous confidence in technology. Engineers built larger ships, taller buildings, and faster machines than ever before. Many believed that innovation could solve almost any problem. Britannic emerged from that environment of optimism and ambition. She represented the belief that lessons from previous failures could be used to create something better and safer. In many respects, that belief was justified. The improvements made after Titanic genuinely saved lives. Yet Britannic also reminds us that no technology can eliminate every risk. Nature, chance, and unexpected events remain powerful forces. This balance between progress and uncertainty gives the story a timeless quality. It speaks not only to people interested in ships, but to anyone interested in the challenges of human progress. Looking back across more than a century, it is remarkable how strongly Britannic continues to capture the imagination. Books have been written about her. Documentaries have explored her history. Divers have dedicated years to studying the wreck. Historians continue analyzing her final voyage. Few ships receive such attention so long after their loss. The reason is simple. Britannic combines mystery, tragedy, courage, and discovery in a single narrative. Every element contributes to a story that remains compelling even today. While countless vessels have crossed the world's oceans, only a small number become enduring symbols of their era. Britannic achieved that distinction not because of the life she was expected to live, but because of the extraordinary journey she actually experienced. Her story continues to remind us that history is often shaped by events no one can foresee, and by the people who find the strength to face them when they arrive. Another fascinating aspect of Britannic is how the ship connects different generations through a shared sense of curiosity. People who study maritime history today were not alive when the ship sailed, nor were their parents or grandparents in many cases. Yet, the story continues to attract attention from around the world. This enduring interest shows the power of historical storytelling. Certain events transcend their own time and become part of a larger human narrative. Britannic has achieved that status because her story contains themes that remain relevant regardless of the era. There are dreams of progress, unexpected setbacks, acts of bravery, and lessons that continue to influence the future. These themes resonate with people whether they are reading about the ship in a book, watching a documentary, or exploring photographs of the wreck. The ship's legacy is also strengthened by the fact that it exists in both history and memory. Historical records provide dates, locations, and technical details. Memory adds emotion, perspective, and personal experience. Together, they create a fuller picture of what happened. Survivor testimonies allow us to understand not only the events themselves, but also how those events felt to the people who lived through them. Fear, confusion, determination, and relief are difficult to capture in official reports. Yet they are essential parts of the human story. Britannic's history would feel incomplete without those voices. They transform a shipwreck into a deeply personal account of survival. Over the years, many researchers have remarked that Britannic deserves greater recognition for her humanitarian role. Before her sinking, she completed several missions transporting and treating wounded soldiers. These voyages may not be as widely remembered as the disaster itself, but they were an important part of the ship's contribution during wartime. Every patient carried aboard represented a life affected by conflict. The medical staff who served on the ship worked under challenging conditions and often far from home. Their dedication forms an essential chapter in the Britannic story. When viewed from this perspective, the vessel becomes more than a famous wreck. She becomes a symbol of service and care during a period of immense hardship. This broader understanding adds depth to her legacy and helps explain why historians continue to study her today. The story of Britannic is not only about how a ship was lost, it is also about what that ship accomplished during the brief years she sailed. In remembering both aspects, we gain a more complete picture of one of the most remarkable vessels ever built. As the years pass, the world around Britannic continues to change, yet the ship remains frozen in a specific moment of history. Nations have risen and fallen, Technology has advanced beyond anything her builders could have imagined. Modern ships are larger, faster, and equipped with systems that seemed impossible in the early 20th century. Yet, despite all these developments, Britannic continues to hold a special place in the public imagination. Her story reminds us that progress is never a straight line. Every achievement is built upon previous successes and failures. The improvements that made Britannic safer than Titanic were the direct result of painful lessons learned only a few years earlier. This connection between past and future is one reason historians find the ship so significant. She represents a turning point in maritime safety and a powerful example of how knowledge evolves through experience. When people study Britannic, they are not only learning about a ship, they are learning about the process by which societies adapt and improve over time. The wreck itself has become an underwater monument. Unlike monuments built of stone in public squares, this one rests quietly beneath the sea. There are no crowds walking around it, no ceremonies taking place beside it, and no plaques visible from the surface. Yet its historical importance is no less profound. Divers who visit the site often describe a sense of respect and reflection. They understand that they are entering a place connected to real lives and real events. Every section of the wreck tells part of a story that began more than a century ago. The rusting metal, the silent corridors, and the remains of once advanced machinery all serve as reminders of a different era. They allow modern observers to glimpse a world that no longer exists. This ability to connect directly with the past is one of the reasons Britannic remains such an important subject of exploration and research. Even after countless studies, there is still something powerful about seeing the physical remains of the ship resting on the seabed. It transforms history from an abstract concept into something tangible and real. Through the wreck, the memories, and the lessons she left behind, Britannic continues to speak across generations. Her voyage may have ended in 1916, but her story has never truly reached its final destination. Instead, it continues to travel through books, documentaries, museums, and conversations, carrying the legacy of one remarkable ship far beyond the waters where she was lost. Perhaps the most enduring lesson of Britannic is that history is often remembered not only for what happened, but for how people responded when it happened. The explosion that struck the ship was beyond the control of those on board. The flooding that followed could not be stopped. Yet, the actions taken during those critical moments made an enormous difference. Crew members organized evacuations. Medical staff remained calm while assisting patients. Officers continued giving instructions as the situation became increasingly dangerous. These decisions helped save hundreds of lives. In many ways, the true story of Britannic is not simply the story of a sinking ship. It is the story of human beings facing a crisis together. Throughout history, moments like these reveal qualities that are difficult to see during ordinary times. Courage, discipline, compassion, and determination often emerge most clearly when circumstances are at their worst. Britannic provided countless examples of these qualities. That is one reason why the story continues to inspire respect more than a century later. The ship also serves as a reminder that historical events rarely fit into simple categories of success or failure. On one hand, Britannic was lost. A magnificent vessel disappeared beneath the sea after only a short career. On the other hand, the majority of those on board survived. Safety improvements worked. Emergency procedures proved more effective than they had been during earlier disasters. The outcome was tragic, yet it also demonstrated meaningful progress. This combination of loss and achievement makes the story unusually complex and compelling. It encourages people to think beyond simple conclusions and consider the many different factors that shape historical events. Even today, new generations continue discovering Britannic for the first time. Some encounter the story through books. Others learn about it through documentaries, museums, or online research. Each person brings a different perspective, yet many reach the same conclusion. Britannic is far more than a footnote connected to Titanic. She is a remarkable historical subject in her own right. Her story touches on engineering, medicine, warfare, exploration, and human resilience. Few ships have influenced so many different areas of history. That influence explains why interest in Britannic has endured for so long and why it will likely continue for many years to come. Long after the last survivor was gone and long after the world that built her had changed beyond recognition, Britannic remained what she has always been, a powerful reminder of both the fragility and the strength of human endeavor. Today, when historians look back on Britannic, they often see more than a single ship. They see an era. The early 20th century was a time of enormous ambition. Nations invested in industry, technology, and transportation on a scale never seen before. Massive ocean liners crossed the seas carrying passengers, cargo, and dreams of a better future. Britannic emerged from that world of optimism. She represented confidence in human ingenuity and the belief that each new generation could build something greater than the last. Although her career was brief, she remains one of the most vivid symbols of that remarkable period in history. At the same time, her story reminds us that even the greatest achievements are not immune to unexpected events. War, accidents, and changing circumstances can alter destinies in ways nobody anticipates. Britannic's transformation from luxury liner to hospital ship illustrates this reality perfectly. The vessel adapted to meet the needs of a world at war, and in doing so became part of a much larger historical narrative. Her legacy therefore extends beyond maritime history. It also belongs to the history of medicine, humanitarian service, and the First World War itself. Every chapter of her story reveals a different aspect of the age in which she sailed. For modern audiences, this richness is part of what makes Britannic so fascinating. She cannot be understood through a single event or a single perspective. The ship's story includes triumphs, tragedies, mysteries, and achievements. It is a reminder that history is rarely simple. Real events are shaped by countless decisions, circumstances, and individuals whose actions combine to create outcomes no one could fully predict. Britannic's journey demonstrates this truth with remarkable clarity. More than 100 years later, Her name continues to spark curiosity and admiration. Researchers still explore her wreck. Historians still analyze her voyages. Readers and viewers still seek out her story. The continued interest is a testament to the ship's enduring significance. While many vessels have been forgotten by time, Britannic remains firmly anchored in historical memory. Her voyage may have ended beneath the waters of the Aegean Sea, but the story she left behind continues to travel across generations, ensuring that the lessons, sacrifices, and achievements connected to her will never be completely lost to history. As evening falls over the waters where Britannic rests today, it is easy to imagine how different the world looked when the ship was still new. The people who built her believed they were creating part of the future. The nurses and doctors who served aboard her hoped to ease suffering during a terrible war. The sailors who guided her across the sea trusted in her strength and design. None of them knew that more than a century later, people around the world would still be talking about the ship and the events that surrounded her. Yet, that is exactly what happened. Britannic became one of those rare historical subjects that refuses to fade from memory. Every generation discovers something new within her story. Some are drawn to the engineering. Others are fascinated by the wreck. Many are inspired by the courage shown during the evacuation. Together, these different perspectives keep the legacy alive. History often remembers dramatic endings, but Britannic's importance extends far beyond her final moments. Her life before the sinking matters just as much. The service she provided as a hospital ship, the lives she helped save, and the lessons she carried forward from earlier disasters, all form essential parts of her story. When viewed as a whole, Britannic becomes a symbol of adaptation and perseverance. She was built for one purpose, transformed for another, and remembered for both. Few ships can claim such a complex and meaningful legacy. Perhaps that is why the story continues to resonate. It reflects experiences that are deeply human. Plans change. Challenges appear without warning. People are forced to adapt. Some moments bring loss, while others reveal unexpected strength. Britannic's history contains all of these elements. Through her story, we are reminded that progress is rarely perfect, but that learning, courage, and determination can leave a lasting impact. Even after the passage of more than 100 years, those lessons remain relevant. The sea may have claimed the ship itself, but it could not erase the memory of what happened aboard her. That memory survives through research, storytelling, and the continued curiosity of people who wish to understand the past. In that way, Britannic's journey is still continuing, not across oceans, but across time, carried forward by everyone who chooses to remember one of history's most remarkable ships. And so, the story of Britannic comes to a quiet end. Beneath the clear waters of the Aegean Sea, the great ship still rests, where she settled on that November morning in 1916. Fish now move through spaces once filled with sailors, nurses, and patients. Sunlight filters down through the water above, touching a vessel that has not sailed for more than a century. Yet, despite the silence that surrounds the wreck, Britannic is far from forgotten. Her story continues to live through photographs, survivor accounts, historical research, and the imagination of those who look back at the past with curiosity. She began life as a symbol of progress, became a ship of mercy during war, and ended her journey as one of history's most fascinating maritime mysteries. Along the way, she carried thousands of people, witnessed acts of courage, and left lessons that continue to matter today. Few ships have experienced such a remarkable journey in such a short span of time. While Titanic is remembered for the lives that were lost, Britannic is often remembered for the lives that were saved. Together, the stories of the two sister ships changed maritime safety forever and influenced generations of shipbuilders, sailors, and travelers. As we leave Britannic resting peacefully beneath the waves, we are reminded that history is not only a collection of dates and events. It is a collection of human experiences. It is the story of people who dreamed, worked, struggled, and persevered in circumstances they could never fully predict. Britannic's legacy survives because it speaks to all of those experiences. More than a century later, her story still encourages us to learn from the past, appreciate the courage of ordinary people, and recognize how even a single ship can leave an extraordinary mark on history. And with that final thought, the great Britannic slowly disappears once more into the quiet depths of memory, where her story will continue to be told for generations yet to come. Good night, and thank you for joining this journey through history.